Good evening everybody, Cam Biker here, and it's time for another TDM Tuesday!
Yeah!
Good evening everybody, Cam Biker here, and it's time for another TDM Tuesday!
Oh, I say.
And tonight we've got a little tiny job to do. But unfortunately, like a lot of little tiny jobs, it can grow. Let me explain why. So our little job is this. The front brake master cylinder is a mess. All the paint's come off. Obviously some brake fluid's got on it at some point and it's just eaten the paint. So we need to repaint this. Problem being, to repaint it, it has to come off the bike, which means we have to disconnect these lines, which means we're going to have air in the brake system, so we need to bleed the brakes. So tonight we're going to do that and bleed the brakes. It should be fun. First thing we need to do is evacuate the master cylinder, get all that old brake fluid out of there, because when this comes off we don't want to spill it. If we do spill it, obviously it can do some damage to the paintwork. Not there's a lot of paintwork left on the bike, to be fair, it's all over there. However, let's protect the bit that's left. So, bit of towel, just to make sure any drips get caught. That should do. And if Tosh got cleaner towels, I would not look like this. To get the fluid out of the reservoir, we're going to use my little vacuum pump. So this basically is a hand-operated pump, which will suck fluid through this hose. Put a reservoir on the end there and another hose, and as the fluid comes through it will just fall into that reservoir. Nice and easy. As you can see, that screw's not in a particularly good state. These things are soft, really soft, so you just don't want to put any pressure on them, but we'll see if we can get it out easily enough. There's one. And there's another. And there's our brake fluid. Actually looks in pretty good nick. That's what we've removed. Now still a few little bits in there, so I've got a completely fresh cloth, completely clean. Just going to try and pop that in there, let it soak up anything that's left. That might take a few minutes. Right, while we're waiting for that to soak up all the fluid, we'll just crack these bolts off so we're ready to get the reservoir off once it's all nice and dry. One, two, and three. That one was easy.
Oi! Thank you.
Just get this banjo bolt out, take off the banjos and make sure, one, it doesn't drip everywhere, and two, that we don't lose any of these copper washers. Very springy. It really wants to lose something. Let's get these out. So we've got the bolt with a washer still on, those two other washers. These, once we've dried them, we'll hang them up so nothing else can come out, and then just get everything nice and clean. We've got a few drops of brake fluid around, but it could have been a lot worse. Now these are still full of fluid, so they will drip, so I'm going to keep them as upright as possible, but out of the way. So a bit of tie wrap magic. Now we need to remove this before we start pulling anything off. This is the brake light switch, or the cable for the brake light switch. Get that out of the way, and now that's free. I can just unbolt it and take it off. Right, just make sure I get no drips out of there, and then I can just unscrew these bolts that we cracked off earlier, and the whole thing should come off. Ta-da! Right, we've got the reservoir off, we've taken out the brake lever, ready for getting a bit of paint. Got some brake cleaner in case there's any spillage. Got some rubbing alcohol, panel wipe type stuff just to clean it, make sure it's ready for paint, and a bit of sandpaper just to get a key on it. So you've seen us paint before, you know what this is all about. This is a horrible mess. Right, going to pop this back on now. What a plonker. Forgot to paint that bit. We'll paint that one later, but we're running out of time this evening, so we need to get this done. Not going to put the lever back in yet. We don't need that to bleed the brakes. If you're doing it the old-fashioned way with the squeezing of the lever to push the fluid out, you would, but we're not doing that. So just going to pop this back on, and then we'll get on with the job. Get that roughly level. Now's the time to be very careful because there's brake fluid around and fresh paint. So fresh it's probably not quite dry yet. So have to make sure we don't get any fluid onto the paint. Right, let's get these bolts through. Long one first, and got a washer on there already. Second washer, this is where you make sure you didn't lose them the first time around. And the final washer. And then very carefully, because this paint is fragile, get a couple of threads on there. Get this little bit of masking tape off the window, otherwise we won't know how much fluid's in there. Really? Really? Just putting the caliper back on so that this becomes the highest point of the system here, and that'll make it possible to bleed it. Right, before we start, I'll just pop off the dust cap off the bleed nipple and just crack it just to make sure it's okay. It is, nothing's seized up. Now I can put the bleeding tool on.
Do what?
Put the brake bleeding tool on.
Uh.
So it's the same vacuum pump again, but this time I've got a longer hose on for extracting the fluid. And it just pops on there. Now we'll get a bit of pressure in there. So I've got the pressure on there. Now I'm going to open up the bleed nipple and let the fluid come out while Tosh pours the fluid in to the reservoir without touching the fresh paint.
It's an open bottle because I've just done the brakes on the Blackbird. Always use a spanking brand new bottle. As soon as you finish with it, chuck it away. Nicely, slowly, catchy monkey. Right, on you go, Rich.
Okay, so now we can open up the nipple, let the fluid out, and there'll be air bubbles come through with it. And we're going to let it run through so we know that all the brake fluid's been changed. That'll mean that that reservoir gets filled up a time or two. And then until there's no air bubbles coming through the tube. You still top it up, Tosh?
Oh yes.
That's coming out now pretty much bubble free, so we'll lock that one off and go to the other side. That's quite a lot's come out, but as Tosh says, we're going to throw away anything we don't use anyway, so might as well use more than we need rather than less. Over to this side of the bike. Didn't mention earlier, but normally you'll do the brake that's furthest away first when you look at how your lines run. This has actually got two lines, one for each side, one for each caliper, so we've just picked the one that's furthest away that's got a longer line. This one, Tosh wants to go all spectacular and mechanical, so my little toy's going and we're going to use something a bit more powerful. I don't know what you mean, I don't see why anybody would notice. Just get this top back up again. Don't want to empty this because then we'll have to start all over again. And now we have power. Basically this is just a bigger version of mine, but it's attached to a compressor for lazy people. You might notice it's already full of brake fluid, but that's out the Blackbird, and it's disgusting. The joy with this machine is it's a one-man job, because I can top up here and watch the sight glass from here. And that's coming through lovely and clear now with no bubbles. So we'll top this one up to the right level, put it all back together, close the nipples of course, and we're done. Nice, black, no longer falling apart, paint horrible, master cylinder. Perfect. So we'll do that off camera and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, ride safe everyone, we'll talk to you again soon.